Sarah walked into that restaurant expecting humiliation. Her ex-husband had set her up on a blind date. As a cruel joke, but what she didn't know was that a deaf boy sitting alone in the corner would become the reason everything changed when her date stood her up and mocked her in front of everyone. Sarah made a choice that seemed small, helping a struggling child communicate his order, but that single act of kindness would unravel secrets, expose betrayals, and bring justice in the most unexpected way, because sometimes the people we help in our darkest moments become the angels who save us, and what started as the worst night of Sarah's life was about to become the beginning of something extraordinary. Stay with me, because this story will restore your faith in humanity and show you that karma never forgets. An address. Sarah Martinez stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting the simple blue dress she had borrowed from her sister. It had been 3 years since her divorce from David, 3 years of rebuilding her life from scratch while raising her 7-year-old daughter Emma alone. The dress felt foreign against her skin because dates were foreign to her now. Her entire world revolved around double shifts at the diner, Emma's school activities, and the constant struggle to make ends meet. But tonight was different, or so she thought. David had called her 2 weeks ago with an unusual proposition. He said he felt guilty about how their marriage ended, about leaving her for his coworker Jennifer. He claimed he wanted to make amends by setting her up with Marcus, a successful businessman and friend of his. Sarah's first instinct was to refuse, but her sister Lisa had convinced her that maybe this was David trying to do one decent thing. So here she was, wearing borrowed confidence and hoping that maybe life had something good in store. The restaurant David had chosen was far fancier than anywhere Sarah could afford, the kind of place with cloth napkins and waiters in bow ties. She felt out of place immediately, but she took a deep breath and walked inside, scanning the room for someone who might be Marcus. That's when she noticed him, a boy around Emma's age, sitting alone at a corner table. He looked distressed, trying to get the waiter's attention, but something was off about the interaction. The waiter looked annoyed, and the boy's hands were moving in sign language. Sarah knew those gestures because Emma's best friend at school was deaf. She had learned basic signs to communicate when the girl came over for playdates before Sarah could think about it further. The hostess approached, asking if she had a reservation. Sarah gave David's name and was led to a table near the center of the restaurant, exposed and visible to everyone. 15 minutes passed, then 30. Sarah checked her phone repeatedly, but there were no messages from Marcus or David. The waiters began glancing at her with pity, and she felt heat rising to her cheeks. She ordered water, trying to maintain dignity while humiliation crept up her spine. Then her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number, but the message made her blood run cold. Having fun. Sarah, did you really think anyone would want to date a broke single mom with baggage? This was just a reminder of what you are, alone and unwanted. Her hands trembled as she read it again. Then another text came through, this one with a photo. It was David and Jennifer at what looked like a bar with Marcus, all 3 of them laughing. The caption read, "She actually showed up. Marcus never planned to come. This is what you get for taking half my retirement in the divorce." The restaurant suddenly felt too small, too bright, too full of witnesses to her humiliation. Tears stung her eyes, but Sarah refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of strangers who were probably already judging the woman sitting alone. She stood up, ready to leave with whatever dignity she had left, when she heard a commotion from the corner table. The young deaf boy was standing now, clearly frustrated, tears streaming down his face. The waiter was speaking loudly and slowly, as if volume would somehow bridge the communication gap. The boy was signing desperately, but no one understood. Without thinking, Sarah walked over to them, her own pain momentarily forgotten. "Excuse me?" she said softly to the waiter. "I know sign language. Maybe I can help." The waiter looked relieved and stepped back. Sarah knelt down to the boy's level and signed, "Hello, what's your name?" The boy's eyes widened in surprise and relief. His hands moved quickly. "My name is Daniel. I'm waiting for my mom, but she's late, and I'm hungry, but he can't understand me, and I don't know what to do." Sarah's heart broke for him. She knew exactly how it felt to be alone and struggling. "What would you like to eat?" she signed. Daniel's face lit up, and he signed back rapidly. Pointing at the menu, Sarah smiled, her first genuine smile of the evening, and turned to the waiter. "He would like the chicken tenders with fries and a chocolate milkshake. Also, could you bring some paper and crayons?" "Do you have them?" The waiter nodded and hurried away. Sarah pulled out a chair and stared out. "And sat with Daniel. Where's your mom?" she signed. Daniel's hands moved slowly now. "My mom works 2 jobs. She's a nurse. She said she would pick me up from my piano lesson at 5. But she didn't come. My teacher brought me here and said to wait," she called. "My mom, but I don't know when she's coming. I have money for food." He pulled out a $20 bill, clutched tightly in his small hand. Sarah felt a lump in her throat. This boy was so much like Emma, independent because he had to be mature beyond his years because circumstances demanded it. She signed back, "You're very brave, Daniel. How about I wait with you until your mom comes? Is that okay?" Daniel nodded enthusiastically, and for the next hour, Sarah forgot about her own humiliation. She and Daniel drew pictures together. He told her about school, about how he loved music. Even though he couldn't hear it, he could feel the vibrations. He explained, his hands moving with excitement. His teacher said he was gifted. Sarah told him about Emma and how she loved to draw too, just like him. She signed stories, and Daniel laughed, a silent laugh that somehow filled Sarah with more joy than she had felt in months. Other diners began to notice the interaction. An elderly couple at a nearby table smiled warmly. A young woman wiped her eyes. The waiter stopped rushing past and started bringing extra treats for Daniel. "Free dessert," one said with a wink. But Sarah didn't notice the shift in the restaurant's atmosphere. She was too focused on making sure this child felt safe and cared for. At 7:30, a woman burst through the restaurant doors, her nurse's scrubs rumpled, her face etched with panic and exhaustion. "Daniel," she called out, even though he couldn't hear her. Then she saw him sitting with Sarah, safe and happy. Tears immediately flooded her eyes. Sarah stood, and the woman rushed over. "I'm so sorry," she gasped. "I'm Rebecca, Daniel's mom. There was an emergency at the hospital. 3 car accident victims came in, and I couldn't leave. I've been trying to get here. I was so worried." Sarah touched her arm gently. "It's okay. He's been wonderful. We've been having a great time." Rebecca looked at her son, then back at Sarah. "Who are you? How do you know sign language?" Sarah explained briefly about Emma's friend, about seeing Daniel struggling. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears again as she realized what Sarah had done. "You stayed with him. You helped him. I don't know how to thank you. Do you have children?" she asked suddenly. "Yes," Sarah said softly, "a daughter, Emma. She's 7. Rebecca nodded slowly. Then something seemed to click in her mind. "You're here alone, aren't you? This is a nice restaurant for a Friday night." Sarah's composure finally cracked just a little, and she admitted, "It was supposed to be a date, but it was a setup. My ex-husband thought it would be funny to humiliate me." Rebecca's expression shifted from gratitude to anger, then to determination. She pulled out her phone. "Excuse me." For just one moment she stepped away and made a call. Sarah couldn't hear the conversation, but Rebecca's body language was intense. When she returned, her expression was different, calmer, but with an edge of satisfaction. "Sarah, I need to tell you something. I don't believe in coincidences. Daniel's father is a lawyer. Actually, he's a very successful family and civil attorney. His name is Thomas Reed. And when I just told him what happened tonight, both to Daniel and to you, he wants to meet you." Sarah blinked, confused. "I don't understand." Rebecca sat down and took Sarah's hand. "What your ex-husband did tonight, that's harassment. Emotional distress, possibly even defamation, depending on what else has happened. Thomas specializes in cases like this, but more than that," she glanced at Daniel, who was happily coloring, "you showed my son kindness when you were hurting. You could have walked out of here. You could have ignored him. But you didn't. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." Sarah shook her head. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Rebecca said firmly. "You did what a good person would do, and those are rarer than you think." 2 days later, Sarah sat in a modern office overlooking the city. Thomas Reed was exactly as Rebecca had described him. Sharp, intelligent and genuinely kind he had listened to. Sarah's entire story, the divorce, David's cruelty, the fake dates, the humiliating texts he had asked, detailed. Questions, taking notes, and his expression grew more serious with each detail. Ms. Martinez. Thomas said finally, what your ex-husband did crosses several legal lines. This wasn't just a mean prank. This was calculated emotional abuse. The fact that he involved a third party, Marcus, and documented it with photos shows premeditation. We can pursue this. Sarah felt overwhelmed. I don't have money for a lawyer. I can barely afford rent. Thomas smiled the same warm smile she had seen on Mommel. Nay, since is seen on Mommel. Consider it payment for what you did for. My son, but I have to warn you, if we do this, it's going to get uncomfortable. Your ex-husband will be forced to face consequences. He won't like that. Sarah thought about Emma, about the nights her daughter had cried, asking why Daddy didn't visit. About the times David had promised to pay extra for school supplies and then conveniently forgot. She thought about 3 years of struggle while David lived comfortably with Jennifer. Do it, she said quietly. Over the next month, Thomas built a case. That was airtight. He subpoenaed David's phone records, which revealed months of messages mocking Sarah to his friends. He obtained testimony from the restaurant staff, who confirmed Sarah's humiliation. He even found evidence that David had been hiding income to reduce child support payments, but the most damaging evidence came from Marcus himself when questioned. Marcus admitted that David had paid him $200 to stand Sarah up and had specifically instructed him to make sure she suffered. He seemed proud of it until he realized he was admitting to conspiracy to commit emotional distress. The court date arrived faster than Sarah expected. She walked into the courtroom with Emma, holding her hand Thomas had suggested bringing her daughter to show the judge exactly what was at stake. David sat on the other side with an expensive lawyer. Jennifer beside him for support. He looked confident, even smug, until he saw Thomas read. Then his expression faltered. The proceedings were swift. Thomas presented evidence methodically, each text message, each witness statement, each financial record that proved David's deception and cruelty. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, listened without expression, but Sarah noticed her jaw tighten when the text messages were read aloud. When it was David's lawyer's turn to speak, he tried to downplay everything. It was just a joke, Your Honor, a prank between ex-spouses that got out of hand. My client admits it was in poor taste. But emotional distress, that's excessive. The judge turned to David directly. Mr. Martinez, do you think humiliating the mother of your child in a public place is funny? David stammered, I didn't mean for it to go that far. I wanted what? The judge interrupted to hurt her, to make her feel small. David looked at Jennifer, then at the floor, and said nothing. The judge's ruling was comprehensive. David was ordered to pay $50,000 in damages for emotional distress his child. Support was increased based on the hidden income, and he was mandated to attend co-parenting counseling before he could have unsupervised visits with Emma. Furthermore, the judge added, and this is important, Mr. Martinez, you will write a letter of Sid. Apology to your daughter explaining that your actions toward her mother were wrong. Children learn how to treat others by watching their parents. You've taught your daughter that cruelty is acceptable. That ends now. David's face went pale. Jennifer looked horrified. His lawyer whispered something urgent, but it was over. As Sarah left the courtroom, Emma squeezed her hand. Mommy, did we win? Emma asked. Sarah knelt down and hugged her daughter tight. Yes, baby, we won, but more importantly, we learned that standing up for yourself matters and that kindness always finds a way back to you. 3 months later, Sarah stood in a different restaurant. This one was a small, family-owned Italian place with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. Across from her sat Thomas Reed, not as her lawyer, but as her date. They had been seeing each other for 6 weeks. Taking it slow, both of them cautious because they had children to consider, but there was something easy between them, something built on mutual respect and genuine affection. Daniel and Emma had become inseparable friends. They had playdates every weekend, teaching each other signs and games. Sarah had even started taking formal sign language classes. Thomas said, reaching across the table to take her hand. Rebecca still talks about that night. She says it was fate. I'm starting to think she's right, Sarah smiled. I was at my lowest point that night. I thought my life was just going to be struggle and loneliness forever. But helping Daniel, helping your son, reminded me that I'm still capable of good things, that my circumstances don't define my character. Thomas squeezed her hand. Your ex-husband tried to break you instead. He pushed you toward something better. Isn't it funny how that works? As they finished dinner, Sarah's phone buzzed. It was a text from David, brief and bitter. You think you won, but you just got lucky. Sarah showed it too. Thomas, who shook his head. Want me to handle it? No, Sarah said, deleting the message. He's wrong, though. It wasn't luck. It was kindness. And that's something he'll never understand. The evening ended with Thomas walking Sarah to her car. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement from an earlier rain. Before you go, Thomas said, I have something for you. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a check made out to Sarah Martinez for $5,000. Sarah looked up, confused. What is this? It's from the restaurant owner from that night, Thomas explained. After everything that happened, he heard the story about how you helped Daniel. He was so moved that he wanted to contribute to your fresh start. He said customers have been asking about you, calling you the angel in the blue dress. Apparently, you've become something of a legend. Tears filled Sarah's eyes. I don't know what to say. Use it for Emma, Coma said, or for yourself. Take a class, start that business you mentioned. Just know that people see you, Sarah. They see your goodness, and it matters. As Sarah drove home that night, she thought about the journey from humiliation to hope, from cruelty to kindness. She thought about how one choice to help a struggling child had changed the trajectory of her entire life. When she arrived home, Lisa was waiting, having watched Emma for the evening. So how was it? Lisa asked, grinning. Sarah hugged her sister tight. It was perfect, but more than that, I think I finally understand something. What's that? Lisa asked. Sarah smiled. That the worst moments of our lives sometimes lead us exactly where we need to be. David tried to destroy me that night. Instead, he gave me the greatest gift. He showed me that I'm stronger than I thought, and that there are still good people in the world, people like Thomas and Rebecca and Daniel. And you, I spent so many years thinking I was alone, Lisa said softly. But you were never alone. You just hadn't found your people yet. That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah sat at her kitchen table and wrote a letter, not to David but to herself. Dear Sarah, 3 years ago you thought your life was ending tonight. It was just beginning. The woman you've become, strong, resilient, kind. She's someone worth celebrating. Don't ever let anyone make you feel less than extraordinary again. Because you are extraordinary, not despite your struggles, but because of them. Keep being kind, keep helping others, keep believing that good things are possible, because they are. And when your daughter asks you someday how you survived, how you thrived, you'll tell her the truth. You chose kindness even when the world chose cruelty. And that made all the difference. Sarah folded the letter and put it in her journal. Then she looked at the photo on her refrigerator, Emma grinning, gap-toothed, and full of joy. Tomorrow, she would wake up and go to work and pick up Emma from school and have dinner with Thomas and Daniel. It would be ordinary and beautiful, and hers. And that, she thought, was the greatest victory of all, because a blind date meant to Humiliate, a single mom, had instead given her everything she never knew she needed. A reminder that kindness is never wasted, that good people exist, and that sometimes the worst nights of our lives are just the beginning of our best chapters. David had wanted her to feel worthless. Instead, she had discovered her worth, and no one could ever take that away again.